Hi, this is Andrew, and this is Keen On, the daily now.tv chat show with some of the world's leading thinkers and writers. Hello everybody, it's June the 28th, 2021, and as always, stuff is happening in California, where I live in San Francisco. The headlines this morning are eerily prescient, as if they were invented in Hollywood, or at least in the old Hollywood. The state's going through a major heat wave. Southern California heat wave brings record temperatures ahead of looming thunderstorms. One wonders whether those thunderstorms are metaphorical or real. The Los Angeles Times reports that the summer dreams are drying up north, up on the Russian River, a paradise whipsawed by drought, flood, and rain. Paradise, of course, is the Northern Californian town that burnt up in the fires a couple of years ago. California is, of course, the dream state, the state made by the movies, invented by the movies. And today on the show, we have one of California's great interpreters, one of California's leading writers on movies. And he has a new book out all about California, Mick LaSalle, Dream State, California in the Movies. Mick, let me get you on screen. This isn't Hollywood, but it's the closest I can get. These fires, Mick, you have a section at the end of your book on Utopia. Is there something cinematic about the state frying up and burning up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess potentially, but it's scary. It wasn't that bad last year, but then the year before that it was horrible. Or was it the reverse? It was horrible last year, but the year before that wasn't that bad. But then the year before that was bad. And at the beginning of every one of these seasons, you just wonder. Yeah, I guess it's the stuff from movies, but who wants to be in a movie? You know.
You have a chapter at the end of your book on California and Utopia, and of course, when we think of Utopia, we also think of dystopia. You bring out one of my favorite movies, Monterey Pop. What's Monterey Pop got to do with California Utopia?
Monterey Pop is it's a movie that it's a documentary that just shows something at its perfect moment before it starts to go bad. And usually in life, whenever things look like they can only get better, and from now on it's just going to be amazing, that's usually when it's at its best point, and then it starts going downhill. And so, to me, that's the whole rock and roll hippie ideal of the '60s just comes to some kind of climax in Monterey Pop, which is film. The film came out in '68, but was filmed in 1967 about the Monterey Pop Film Festival. And by the time you get to, and it's just it's a vision, and it's just perfect weather, and everybody's beautiful. And then by the time you get to Woodstock, not even Altamont, by the time you get to Woodstock, things are starting to curdle. It's like everybody's really on serious drugs. They can barely talk.
And is this you talk about another movie, the 1970 movie, Gimme Shelter? So we go from when it comes from the utopia of Monterey Pop to the dystopia of Gimme Shelter. Very Californian journey, and it only took a couple of years, Mick, didn't it?
Yeah, it took 3 years. No, 2 years, 2.5 years. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I think you see it coming in Woodstock, but then it's completely over by Altamont.
What were you doing in 1968?
In 1968, I was in third grade. So that's what I was doing. Third grade or the beginning of fourth grade, because I was born.
So you weren't at Monterey or Altamont or any of these
no,
things?
No, I wasn't.
One of the movies that you talk about, Mick, that sort of somehow summarizes this intimate, eerie relationship between utopia and dystopia in California is Day of the Locust. What is
Yeah.
it about Day of the Locust that you think somehow captures this um, spirit or anti-spirit of California?
Well, Day of the Locusts, this movie guy comes out hoping to make it in Hollywood, and everything is kind of beautiful, and the woman is, he's in love with, he meets a woman, he's falling in love with her, but then everything just sort of just goes to hell. The woman is pretty awful, really. The his prospects aren't all that great, and then it ends with a total riot at a movie premiere. So it's sort of like it's like a picture of like a dream that just goes. It's like everything's just beautiful on the surface, and it's like the head turns around, and there's like snakes, there's like worms coming out of the eyeballs or something. Has
Do you
that?
think that there's something coincidental about the fact that the movie industry, not that it was really formally born in California, but it matured in California? That could the movie business have begun anywhere but California?
Well, in the old days they used to. Excuse me. In the old days, they used to film on sound stages that didn't have roofs. So in that practical sense, the answer is no. I mean, they were originally doing it in Fort Lee, New Jersey. That was the center of the film business was Fort Lee, New Jersey. But Fort Lee, New Jersey, half the year is bad weather, um, whereas California is great. And then California also has access to I mean, right out in other words, you have the city, but then you have access to the woods. You have access to stuff that looks like the set of a western. There's so many possibilities. In terms of just in a physical sense, no. But in terms of like a spiritual sense, I mean, it just really, of course, California grew up with the movies, and the movies grew up with California. But even from the beginning, California was always a place where you go to strike it rich. You go to basically, if you just have some courage and you make your way across, you might get lucky. And that's
Like
kind
you
of
did, you say that you came to California as a 20-year-old. I guess after college, you grew up in New York, and you
yeah.
found yourself both in terms of your career and perhaps your identity in California.
Well, I wouldn't say either, actually. Uh,
Or maybe you
I
lost yourself.
well, yeah, well, no. In terms of I would say that that would be accurate if I came here and then got a job. But it was the opposite. I got a job, and so I came here. So it was, what I mean. So it wasn't like I went to California in pursuit of something. And the other thing is, I came here when I was 26, and by then my identity is pretty much formed. I don't. I definitely. I don't. I mean, I root for the Mets. You know what I mean? I don't root for the Giants. I mean, I have nothing against the Giants. I hope. I wish them well. But when I
This is
check
the baseball, the San
yeah,
Francisco
baseball. Yeah,
Giants rather than the New York Giants.
exactly. Yeah. So my identity as somebody who is from New York is pretty fixed, and I think also just my sensibility is very much kind of a working class New York sensibility rather than a California
Do
sensibility.
you think that that enables you to see through California, that what you call a working class New York sensibility? Does that
I,
give you the hardness to see through California, not to get seduced by it?
I will. I mean, I could get seduced by it, but it's not going to change my identity. You know what I'm saying? I would say that
Is there a California identity, Mick?
I would say, well, California identity. I mean, not strictly speaking, you can't say that there's a specific California identity, but I would say that there are there's certain ways of looking at life. There's certain ways of behaving. I mean, when I first arrived in San Francisco, I was very thrown off by the way the people talked to me because it was rather foreign. They were they were friendly. They were familiar without being friendly. It's a strange combination that it's in. Okay.
That
People
was
are kind of
that was a Californian exit and re-entry there.
okay.
Sorry
That's great.
about that for the
Uh,
technical the technical adjust. But Mick, you were talking about the Californian identity.
I was just talking about ways of behavior and also ways of looking at life. So I just found it very disconcerting when I was first here because people were familiar with that being friendly, um, and so it just the ways of getting to know people were a little bit different. Um, I mean, I guess it's most fundamental level. People are kind of the same when you get to really, really, really know them. But how many people in life do you really, 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 really get to know? And for the most part, most social interaction is played against whatever the convention is in that particular place. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think that you know your book and your career as a writer about movies? Do you think the fact that California is such a celluloid state undermines personal relations? Do you think people struggle with one another in person, in contrast with New York?
I don't think that it's the celluloid aspect to it, but I would say that because California is largely made up of people who move there from other places, and so don't feel necessarily grounded in all the people they went to high school with and their whole family. There's a little bit of a necessary, a kind of a necessary self-protectiveness. The uh, the New York thing is self-protective. The East Coast people are self-protective against strangers, but as soon as you cross that not stranger barrier, then all the defenses are gone and everybody's just completely normal. In California, there's a whole area of friendliness that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It doesn't mean that people are cold and don't want it to mean anything, but it's just that they have to. I think they feel they have to protect themselves because, in a sense, a lot of them are alone.
Mick, the other headline, of course, today is the very sad one about the disaster in Florida. Again, it's rather cinematic. Here we have the image of the New York Times, the building literally collapsing. You have a section in your book on disasters. You have something on the towering inferno and something on airport, which is a more humorous take on disaster movies. What is it about California and disasters, Mick, that bring the two together? Is it because the state is an endless series of disasters from beginning to end?
Well, it's partly that, but it's also I think part of the fun of California having disasters as far as people outside of California is concerned is that it seems like everything seems perfect. So everything's the weather is nice and everything and it's so physically beautiful. Even the cities are physically beautiful, and so it it's kind of like if you lived in paradise, right? Then well, if you don't live in
Well,
paradise.
this is paradise, but if you lived in paradise, you'd be out of a home because it burned down a couple of
That's
years ago.
true. Yeah, yeah, that's okay. Well, if you live in another kind of paradise, the only thing that you have to worry about is death, right? I mean, like if you're living in a kind of a hard, lousy place, you have to worry about everything else. But when you're living in a place that's really beautiful and nice and the weather's beautiful, the only thing that's left is disaster. The only thing left is like the horrible thing happening. And so I think that's a little bit of that. I think it's a little bit of like it's like, well, nothing bad can happen, and then of course something like unthinkable and horrible happens. In this case, it happened in Florida, where just a building shears off and collapses. It's just something.
Is Florida just a wannabe California, do you think?
Well, it's good. Florida's like California with humidity, I guess. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I like Florida. Florida just fine, but it's very difficult to be there. It's the weather. I mean, it's the weather is ghastly in Florida as opposed to in California. So I don't know. If it's a wannabe, it's going to stay wanting to be because
Yeah, well, we
it's
don't want. We certainly are not eager. Although some Californians, especially the tech people now, are going to Florida, which I think we're all happy about. Uh, Mick, we had your fellow movie reviewer and San Francisco dweller, David Thompson, on the show recently. I'm sure you know him.
yeah, sure. I know him.
Talking
Good
about
guy.
the cinematic precursors of Donald Trump. And of course, one of the movies that came up, Thompson is an expert and authority on Wells and Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
Is there something peculiarly Californian about Kane, given you're talking about paradise? Here was a man who lived in paradise and was profoundly miserable.
Yeah, I guess it is. I know. I think that's about right. I don't write. I barely. I don't even know if I write about Citizen Kane in the book, but
I
I
don't
think
think you
that's.
do,
I
actually.
don't
I was
think I do.
curious why you didn't. Is it too big a film? You talk about less well-known films.
No, I just didn't think of it. I mean, that's it didn't cross my mind as I was writing these chapters. Think about the book like this. A book like this is very strange. I never wrote a book like this because it's basically when one starts a chapter in a book like this, you don't know where you're going to go because basically the only thing that is going to get you to the end of the chapter is getting ideas and the ideas are the one thing you don't know if you're going to get. Like if I have to tell this story, then I have to tell this story, I have to tell this story, then that's an easy way to write because you know what you have to do. But if you just have to get ideas as you go along. So in a sense, at the beginning of every chapter, I'm at the mercy. I know what the topic is, right? But
Right.
I'm at the
And the
mercy of
book is
whatever ideas
great.
I
I
can
mean,
get.
you've got chapters on utopia, on love, um, on identity. The only thing I was looking for in the book was more on Hitchcock. Thompson wrote a piece for LitHub recently about why Hitchcock's films still feel dangerous. Of course, the ultimate Hitchcock California movie is Vertigo.
Vertigo.
Why did you? I think
I
you may
mentioned
have
I
a couple
mentioned
of
Vertigo.
references, but
Yeah.
what do you think about Hitchcock and California, particularly Vertigo? And the other great California movie that he made was Shadow of a Doubt,
Shadow of
about
a Doubt.
small town America, about Santa Rosa in 1943.
Yeah, Shadow of a Doubt. Shadow of a Doubt is interesting because you wonder if you have this murderer comes to town and the thing that undermines him is the fact that he has a psychic connection with his niece. And the first time I saw the movie, I didn't put it in the book because I didn't agree with myself the second time I saw it. But that might be an argument for only watching things once. I felt that in a way he was cast out of that basically that the small town almost had a kind of like it was almost like vaccinated against him or something. That there was something in the small town that was in its own way lethal, um, and that would be able to expel the guy, and that there was like something in the workings of the small town and the way Hitchcock presented the small town as like kind of benign but weird, and that there was something about that would be lethal to the bad guy, like a kind of like a kryptonite. But when I saw the movie again, I didn't agree with myself. So I think that's a good idea, but I didn't use it because I can't put stuff in that I don't agree with.
What
The
about
rest,
Vertigo?
Vertigo. Well, Vertigo is great. I mean, Vertigo is. I mean, to me, just the California thing about it is that California. It's very San Francisco. San Francisco just is beautiful, and if this was taking place in New York, he wouldn't even stand out because in New York everybody's having a nervous breakdown. But somebody who's having a nervous breakdown in the middle of this beautiful, colorful place, almost ideal looking city in 1958 is not only going to stand out, but he's also going to feel very lonely because he's the only
Right.
one going through hell.
It's an Vertigo, of course, is the anti-love story. It's a
Yeah.
it's a phallic film. I mean, Hitchcock was, I think, obsessed with one kind of phallic imagery or another, and the whole film, I think, is a series of images of trees and Coit Tower and all the rest of it. So he had sex on his mind. All movies, of course, have sex on their mind. You have a section on love in the book. You write about modern girls. You
Oh
write
yeah.
about A Star Is Born. You write about American Graffiti. What is it about California and love, Mick?
Well, it's California really lends itself to one of the genres. The one great night film where. And I think it's partly because it's kind of a car culture, and also because it just looks really good, and it has I don't know there's something well, it's a beautiful backdrop to fall in love in. It's there's the possibility of movement. I mean, it's not like everybody has to take the subway to get from one place to another. Everybody just gets in the car and goes somewhere, and there's just possibilities of a lot of reversals. the movie Modern Girls, I hope that people see that movie because I think that's a really great movie about being young in the 80s, and that really was almost ignored in its time. In fact, when it
Yeah.
opened in 1986, it didn't screen for critics, so it wasn't even reviewed in most places. And the only reason why it was reviewed in the Chronicle is because I was at this stage of my career where they would send me to the worst movies that were out there, and it just so happened, and which is very often the movies that don't screen, and that turned out to be really good. Yeah. Anyway, it's a beautiful backdrop, and there's a lot of possibility, and I think that's probably about it. Although the difference is the difference between the thing that makes it California rather than New York or East Coast is that with with California, usually the one great night movie, the falling in love thing, is not just about falling in love, but it's usually about like realization of yourself, like realizing becoming a better person. California is all about self improvement in some way, either physically or mentally or both.
Yeah, I wonder if the one night thing is also because California is built on not having a memory, and one night films are about forgetting both the past and the future. They're all in the present. Another genre of movies that you're a big fan of, that you really write wonderfully about in the film, are noirs. What is it about a noir? I'm not sure if everyone even listening or watching this knows what a noir is. So you might define that, Mick, and talk
Okay.
about the noir in California and this genre which lends itself so perfectly to the state.
Well, film noir is a kind of crime film in a sense, or a crime film that was made largely from around 1944 through the early 1960s. They were characterized by certain stylistic elements, a lot of very often flashbacks, a lot of evil women, long shadows, cities, streets at night, usually streets at night after it rains. So there's like certain characteristics, and to qualify as a noir, usually different movies can be argued into being noirs, but usually they have several, like more than a few of those characteristics. Very often narration too. It was a rainy night, she walked in, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit of that going on. And with California, I think that noir is very much a product of California. It's definitely a product of California writers, but also within noir. And this is like the discovery I made as I was doing it, because I never bothered to notice. But within noir, it seems like we have two distinct varietals. We have the San Francisco noir and the Los Angeles noir. And the Los Angeles noir is much more despairing and negative and hopeless and nihilistic, whereas the San Francisco noirs, as bad as they get, as awful as it gets, usually they have happy endings. So I know it's a strange thing.
I mean, one of the my favorite sort of modern noirs, I guess, is The Long Goodbye, which is the classic LA noir, right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
What
I
would
mean,
be in a San Francisco noir? Would Bullet be a noir in a weird kind of way?
well,
Noir
maybe,
with a
but
car chase?
yeah, sure. But I would rather keep if you keep it to like the oh, what's that? Hold on a second. Hold on. Right there. Come on. I am so sorry. We're returning a rental car, and we are discussing which one gets to drive the rental car and which gets to drive our car to pick up the
Is
car.
this the script of a noir, a contemporary noir, Mick?
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about So if you get to our San Francisco noir, I mean, like a Maltese Falcon is kind of like a proto noir, but also you get to like Born to Kill. Uh, there's what's that? The one with Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart, not Key Largo. Dark Passage.
Hmm.
That's another one. So anyway, so it's those things, and they all they get it gets really bad, really bad. But usually there's like a reversal at the end. Another one is Decoy. Horrible stuff, but then in the end, it's all right. Or a good one is what's the one with Orson Welles? Touch of Evil, not Touch of Evil.
Yeah.
That is, but I'm not talking about that one. It's the one with Rita Hayworth.
Not the Shanghai one.
Yeah, Lady from Shanghai.
Oh, Lady from Shanghai.
Yeah, Lady from Shanghai. That's another one where it ends like in a massacre, but actually the good guy walks away pretty much fine. So that's typical San Francisco. Just a different vibe. I mean, like what I say in the book is that L.A. San Francisco doesn't care if you live or die, but L.A. actually wants to kill you.
Yeah, I always think that L.A. is like New York in nice weather, whereas San Francisco is genuinely Californian, for better or worse. Mick, I know you got to return the rental car, but let's quickly move on.
Sure.
We had again, I'm sure you know him, Ron Brownstein has a wonderful new book out, Rock Me on the Water, a book about 1974, arguing that this was the great moment in American cultural history. He writes about Rock Me on the Water, which is, of course, a song and about art and literature. But above all else, it's a book about movies. And he begins the book with reference to both Shampoo and Chinatown. Is 1974 the great year, Mick, for California movies? You write about Shampoo and Chinatown. And, of course, Chinatown, again, is one of the Californian movies.
I could have sworn Shampoo was 1975. Really? That's 1975?
Well, I think he cheats a little bit.
That's what it is.
Anyway, what's the year?
Yeah, amongst friends. I mean, 1974 was a nice year. I started to say that was my first concert of Sir Elton John with John Lennon at Madison Square Garden in 1974. 1974 was perfectly fine. But I think with all these books, I mean, I think to say 1974 was the greatest year, it's just an organizing principle for being able to talk about the 70s. I wouldn't take that specific year, the concept of that specific year, terribly seriously. And not only that, but I would expect that the writer of the book wouldn't take it seriously enough to inhibit him from talking about the early 70s in general. I mean, the early 70s in general is the fruition of the 60s. I mean, the early 70s.
Right. Well, that's I think his point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the early 70s were great. They were great for movies. They were great for culture. They were great for Vietnam being over in January of 1973. So I didn't have to worry about that when I was 14. So I didn't have to worry about that. So it was a great time. But just you can't overdo it. I think that I haven't read that book. I'm interested in reading.
You should read it. I think you'd find it really interesting. I mean, it begins with a wonderful description of the friendship between Nicholson and Beatty, and talks about them as very different characters and the movies as being very different movies, but 1974 representing a culmination. Anyway, Mick, I know you got to return the rental car. Let me end. Great book, Dream State, California in the Movies. Anyone who's interested in either California or the movies needs to read it. It's written in your unique, erudite but very readable and fun way. One movie, Mick. I know this is a dumb question, but I got to ask it at the end. One movie. If someone never been to California, never going to come, didn't know anything about the state, but if they had to watch one movie about California, would it be Wizard of Oz? You begin with that film, even if it isn't formally a film about California.
Well, I'd say that's a good movie about Hollywood, because the wizard is a phony who sets himself up as a big shot in a place where all the people are little, and he gives everybody very bad advice. And when he tries to, anybody comes to him to have do anything, he tells them basically to go out and get themselves killed by going to kill the witch. But then they finally do kill the witch. And then what he does, when he has to give them something, he can't give them what they really want, so he gives them lessons in being a phony. So he gives the guy who doesn't have a brain a college degree. And he gives the guy who doesn't have a heart evidence that he has a big heart, and he gives the cowardly lion a medal. So it's like saying, hey, you can set up shop just like I did. I'm not even a wizard, and everybody thinks I'm a wizard. So you could do this. To me, that's just very California. Definitely very Hollywood for sure.
Well, if you want to understand California on film, watch Wizard of Oz. If you want to read about California on film, read Mick LaSalle's new book, Dream State: California in the Movies. Mick, good luck on returning the car. And I'd love to have you back on the show with David Thompson, because
he's a great
then
guy.
we can debate all these films in more detail and more controversy. Thanks
I
so
would love
much.
to. I would love to come on with David. He's a friend of mine, and he's a brilliant, great guy. I like him a lot.